Missed part of the show? You can always go back and listen with SiriusXM On Demand. This is Breitbart News Tonight on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
You're listening to Breitbart News Tonight with Sonny Johnson and Rebecca Mansour. Captain Mike, do we have that audio, that clip of I'm not sure if we did get it. We do. Sonny, intro this audio. This is some interesting audio because it bears on our discussion about, some of the voices that are being, elevated in conservative media are not helpful, I think. And this is, in this particular voice is somebody that we should be listening to, it seems. Tell us about this.
Okay, so recently Candace Owens made a video about George Floyd where she commented about his past and that because of his past, he should not be used as a martyr, and that basically Black people choose to elevate the lowest amongst us because it wasn't like George Floyd was like a Martin Luther King Jr. Well, Martin Luther King Jr. also cheated on his wife multiple times. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, had a lot of stuff in his past. Yeah,
no one amongst us is perfect. No one amongst us walks on water. But that has become the standard of what Candace Owens has attributed to Black America, that if you do not
can
walk
I just
on
say
water,
on that, they're not raising him up. They're recognizing an injustice was done to him. And the other thing is that it is also a mark of the humanity of a community that they care about the least among them enough to be outraged when an injustice is done to the least.
You could look at it in a whole different aspects, like the idea of, the biggest problem in the Black community is children not having their fathers in their lives. Well, here's a child that no longer has their father in their life. Do you have any sympathy at all for that? And if these are the things you constantly say out of your mouth, do any of them register when a moment like this actually comes up? So one of the things that white conservatives and Republicans often will say to us is that you need to get candidates running in these positions. Why don't you run candidates? Why don't you run candidates? Well, one of the Black candidates that is running for office is Joe E. Collins III from California. He's running for the 43rd district in California. And he recently had to comment on the video that was put out by Candace Owens. And his remarks are shadowing a lot of Black conservative and Republican remarks coming about this whole ordeal and kind of how it's been handled over the last month. Mind you, in just the last month, Candace Owens has called Black people chimpanzees. She's called us monkeys. She's called us the lowest rungs. These are the words that are coming out of her mouth as it pertains to Black America. And she was invited to the White House yesterday by Pence. So I'll have more commentary on that tomorrow on Sonny's Corner. Y'all should really, really check that out to get the full picture. But this audio, it comes from Joe Collins, who is running for the 43rd seat in California. And go ahead and you can play the audio.
Yeah, let's play the audio.
The person who got her clout by saying the policies of the Democratic Party has destroyed the Black community. So if you have a person who is a victim of the policies of the Democratic Party that has destroyed our communities, when a person goes through these things and then they are murdered by the cop, how could you in good conscience sit up here and say, well, he's a criminal? Well, no, because they have the policies that target Black people and turn us into criminals. We have no opportunities in the hood. We have no economic development in the hood. We have the poorest education in the hood. So if you want to sit up here and say that every single Black person that gets murdered by the cop, oh, well, he was a criminal, well, he was this, he was that. When you got your fame speaking in front of the House by saying these policies that the Democratic Party have created failed the Black community, knowing that the majority of the Black community live in poverty, it makes you look like a an idiot. It makes you look like a sellout, and that's exactly what you are. So don't open your mouth and say nothing else about the black community. Pull up to South Central Los Angeles. Pull up to anybody's inner city. Actually live what black people go through on a regular basis. Don't sit up here and try to use your grandfather's name to talk about what he went through as if you know the black struggle. Like you don't know nothing. I have a black son. And if my black son is murdered by a cop, and I hear you telling this man that he got murdered because he was criminal, we're going to have some problems. When the last time you sat with any family that's grieving right now because they've lost a child to police brutality? When the last time you sat with a child who lost their parent to police brutality? When the last time you had anybody in your family that lost their life because of police brutality? Go talk to these people and tell them to their face, oh, he only died because he was a criminal. It's cool that he got killed by a white person because he was a criminal. It's cool he got killed by a cop because he was a criminal. Nobody is saying that police are bad. You got a few cops. You got a few cops that are terrible. And we know this because you got cops that are gang members. So the majority of the time, it's not race related, but they're targeted because of the laws that are put in place that are racially biased towards black people. You know what I'm saying? So if you mad about how I feel about the black community, about these so-called Republicans opening their mouth about black men who are dying.
Yep, we lost the end of it, but
and understand, black men are the most likely to vote Republican. Black men who want to be providers for their families, who want to be husbands to their wives, who want to be fathers to their children, who want to be coaches for the baseball team, the basketball team, the football team, who wants to take their daughters to cheerleading practice. These are the goals of black men that make them more likely to want to vote for a Republican to protect those goals. And when you constantly have black men under attack from these talking mouthpieces on the right, this is what makes black people so sick at even the notion of thought of coming over to the right. It is not policy. It is not ideas. It's not that we want to live under Democrats. It's not any of that. It is moments like this when we should be having honest conversation. And instead of having honest conversation, people on the right choose to pick these bomb throwers that have nothing but vitriol and hatred in their heart permeating for black men and put them at the center of the entire conversation. It is a time for choosing. This entire time we have been having rational, good, open, honest dialogue on the right without any name calling, without any of the former kind of rhetoric that always leads us up into racism or white supremacy or any of those things. These conversations are completely possible, but it is going to be incumbent upon you, conservatives and Republicans, to demand a shift in this conversation. And that shift simply means getting rid of these stereotypes and these talking points and these black faces that have no love in their heart for the black community. So if you want to be black and you want to support Trump, I have no problem with that. If you don't want to have a relationship with the black community, I have no problem with that. I'm not trying to force you to. But if you are going to be exalted as a leader in the black community, then you should have some kind of relationship and connection with the people inside that community. And if you don't, then it is a complete waste of time and an insult to the black people that actually give real thought and real heart and real passion to these issues. It is an insult to us when this becomes what the standard looks like. And Joe is running for Congress. He answered your call. You said more black people need to run. He said, fine, I'll put my name on the ballot and be one of those black people that carries your message into the black community. And when this is the message that you give him to take back, and then you can't understand why black people aren't over here, this is why. Another one of the main people and kind of pushing black conservatism these days is Maj Toure. Maj Toure runs Black Guns Matter. He's very, very active. In fact, I gave him my Active of the Year award last year because he attends CPAC. He ran for office. He does on the ground Second Amendment training in black neighborhoods. So he's going to Baltimore. He's going to Philly. He's going to Chicago. You know what I'm saying? He's on the ground in these areas actually pushing the message of Second Amendment rights, of liberty and freedom. He announced today that he will not be supporting Republicans on any level because of the way that they keep exalting and elevating Candace, no matter how negative and abusive she is towards the black community. So in droves, you are losing people. I've had another guy on my show, Shakim Ahmed. He is one of the organizers down in South Carolina. He runs 2 community centers in the middle of the hood. He's a huge Donald Trump advocate. He has had to back off of his support for Donald Trump and pushing the Republican Party and pushing conservative principles because he doesn't want to lose the respect that he has in his community center because of the things that Candace is saying. So, like, it is having a detrimental ripple down effect on the black people that are actually trying to push the message, the ideas, and the ideology, what these mouthpieces are doing.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I gotta say, I don't understand. Donald Trump retweeted today, President Trump, a tweet from Glenn Beck that was Glenn Beck of all people, who despised Donald Trump, by the way. And this is a tweet, yeah.
And this is a question about character, okay? So at this point, what they're saying is we need to look at George Floyd's past so we can determine his character and then we can gauge his humanity. That is what is being said right now. So what if we run Glenn Beck through this, right? So what if we say for Glenn Beck, in order to gauge his humanity, we have to look at the character of his past. What kind of picture would be painted of Glenn Beck? Does anybody remember the drunk, the violent, the shock jock that couldn't wait to say the most offensive things out of his mouth for ratings? Do you remember that Glenn Beck? Or are you only allowed now to look at the new Glenn Beck that he presented to you and judge him on that character? And the same thing goes with Donald Trump. Should we look back in his past and everything that you would say is a negative character flaw about Donald Trump? And should we judge him on the negativity of that past? Now, see me, I offer Glenn Beck grace and forgiveness. I offer Trump grace and forgiveness. And my question is, where is that grace and forgiveness for George Floyd? Why is it that his name has to be run through the mud? He didn't ask to be choked out and killed and murdered and brought into the middle of all of this. So why is his character at the forefront of it all? Especially from people that if I looked at their past, I would see quite a few skeletons in the character department.
Yep. You think? Maybe, kind of, sort of? Yeah, I definitely think. Let's get some more of our calls. Let's go to Chris in New York on line 6. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, ladies. Both of you, respectively, have great shows. Listen to you guys at different times. Basically, a background on me, I'm retired 2 years ago from the NYPD. I was a 25-year veteran, retired as a lieutenant. Very proud Latino, married to a Colombian woman. My mom was an immigrant from Peru, my whole family. Basically, my take generally on, as most cops that I've experienced with, are definitely, it was a murder. Not only the murder cop deserves to go to jail, but so do his partners, because of the fact that any one of them stepping up would have prevented this whole thing from happening. They deserve jail. I think 99% of my law enforcement brethren think this way. However, I do firmly believe this is not racially motivated, and it's not what the media, the narrative is saying, that there's systemic racism in law enforcement. I can speak specifically now to the NYPD. I came out when Dinkins was the mayor, went through Giuliani, and now back to de Blasio. Liberalism is a mental disorder. And to go to the definition of insanity, where you guys are talking about it over and over again, Democrats in the inner cities, of all inner cities, New York, Baltimore, L.A., Chicago, continue to vote in black politicians and black police commissioners get picked, black, everything continues the same and nothing changes. And while I do believe that there is police brutality, I do believe there is racism in our culture as it is nationwide, it still is not compared to the pandemic issues that are in the minority Latino, but in this specific reason, the blacks with black-on-black crime, teenage pregnancy, it goes on, high school dropout rates, and black, it's just in 1 weekend alone in Chicago, there's more homicides than there are last year that were, like blacks were killed without weapons. And it just doesn't change until what Sonny's saying. Yes, we have to dialogue with our fellow brothers of all races, like has happened in NYPD. Since I started in '92, the amount of minorities, black, Spanish, Asian cops that have been introduced into the NYPD is dramatic. The leadership is dramatic. Still room for improvement, but still things will not change unless the real issues in the minority community are changed, and it has to do with politics. But for some reason, they just don't break, not to sound racial, to break the chains of the Democratic Party. And I think until that is rectified, there's really not going to be any systemic change, regardless of who's president or not.
Okay, I would say that if you call this, if you have a problem with the idea of systemic racism, call it progressivism, because that's its name. That's the ideology that they're talking about. And because racism is entered into the question, then it becomes this huge fight. When the actuality of it, the systemic racism is just progressivism. That's its name. And you can call it so. And like I said again, a lot of the problems or the conditions in these communities are not caused by the police officers. They are in fact caused by the government in these areas, and then the police are thrown in the middle of it and expected to be like a cure-all. So I don't put that onus on police that this is the police's job to fix, because it's not. And in that, I can say we have to take down the size and scope of government and the interactions between government and the population. And there's also work to be done amongst us people, us humans, us Americans, about changing the circumstances of how we interact with each other and what is going on in our communities. Those problems are not going to be changed by government. There's no conversation we can have involving government that's going to fix any of those issues. But if we start to fix some of the government issues and we take those issues off the table, then we could start to have the other issues that face us as human beings. We can have those issues discussed a lot more honestly. But you can't really say like focus on just the black on black crime when you have video of a man saying, "I can't breathe, please get off my neck, mama." You know what I'm saying? Like, it's really hard to get us to focus when that is the case, and that is still on the menu and first dish served. So like, we have to start looking at it from that perspective, that we need to start tackling some of these issues so we can get them out of the way and move on to other issues. But as long as these issues keep coming up at the forefront because we're too afraid to discuss them, then we never get them off the table. If we never get them off the table, then nothing ever changes. So I can halfway agree with what you're saying, completely understand your sentiment. And really, like I said, I don't want the police in the middle of it. But until we start to push these conversations more and more, we're going to keep coming back to this point, and police are going to keep getting the target put on their back. And it's not fair for them, and we can alleviate that by elevating this conversation, and I think it's incumbent upon us to do that.
You know what, Sonny? We are now at the end of the show, and I want to encourage our listeners to check out your show tomorrow. Give us the time right here at SiriusXM Patriot. What is it? It starts at 2 o'clock Eastern.
It starts at 1 p.m. Eastern.
1 p.m. Excuse me. 1 p.m. Eastern. I almost got the wrong. At 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on SiriusXM Patriot, and I know that you're going to be talking about all of these issues and more. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I want to encourage everyone to have a safe weekend. Please check out Breitbart.com for all your news coverage. I'll catch you tomorrow. Or, excuse me, catch you next week. Sonny will catch you tomorrow. This is Rebecca and Sonny signing off.